friends, my name is Irene and this is my booktube channel Irene Reads, and thanks to Janelle from Too Fond of Books, there are many new subscribers in this channel and I hope that you'll enjoy it. And I'm hoping that you are cozy and comfortable and maybe make yourself a cup of tea. And let's talk about books that I've read in the month of January. January was a great reading month for me. I read 7 books. Few of them were 5 stars, most of them were 4 stars. It was a really great reading month and a great experience. So let's begin talking about it. Let's start with all mysteries that I've read. First, I've begun a new series about my New Year resolutions and not starting any new things. I just can't. Hopefully I will be able to finish it, like to catch it up this year, because for now this series has only 2 books. And this is a Nef March series about Captain Jim and Lady Diana. This is the first book in the series Murder in Old Bombay. I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. I couldn't stop reading it. I listened to it an audiobook and also had a physical copy from my library, so I can't show you both of them, so here's the cover. I really liked the audiobook. It was read by Vikas Adam. It was a wonderful experience. He has a slight British Indian accent and it's beautiful and it suits that book so well. So this is about Captain Jim, who is, it takes place in 1892, I think, in Bombay in British India. And Captain Jim is half Indian, half British, which is very unusual. And he was in the hospital at the beginning of the novel. He was very bored and he began to read Sherlock Holmes novels. And also he stumbled upon this article in the newspaper about 2 ladies from rich family who jumped from the tower in the university. And so they were dead and it was supposed to be a suicide, but there were a few persons over there who were at first captured by police, and there was investigation, but nothing was proved and they were released, and it was supposed to be a suicide. He read then a letter in the newspaper from the brother of one of them, and he was also the husband of another. So these 2 girls who jumped were sisters-in-law, I think you can tell it. And he was writing this letter about that they were definitely, it was not a suicide, something very bad happened to them, and they were bright girls who never could end their lives by themselves. And this letter touched Captain Jim so much that after he was released from the hospital, he wanted to investigate this murder. He wanted to be like a Sherlock Holmes from the books that he liked. And so he went, he decided to be a journalist, and as a journalist he went to this family, to this man who wrote letters, and introduced himself. And then he actually was hired by this man as a private investigator to investigate the death of his sister and wife. This is a more adventurous mystery novel. There is a mystery, there is a rather exotic setting for me. It is unique because I never read anything taking place in British India and I liked this very much. It was very interesting and engaging and adventurous, and also there is a love story in there and I like this love story very much. There is some war snippets in here. I was very excited about this book. I gave it 5 stars. I can't wait to read another one, and I am just in general like very excited about this new series. Highly recommend, especially for those my Russian-speaking friends or English-speaking friends who read Boris Akunin series about Rast van Doren. This is a Russian author, and it was very beloved series. This is my favorite type of mysteries, half adventure, half mystery, a little bit of romance in it. And he ended this series, so there will be no more novels about Rast van Doren, and I was grieved. But now I am excited about reading this new series, which is very similar in vibe, I think. So yeah, highly recommend. Then I continued to read my beloved series. One of them is Inspector Mangamash series by Louise Penny. This is The Brutal Telling. I think this is the 5th novel from this, mystery series. Actually, I have another one from the library and I'm reading it now, because if you read this, you know that this ends on the note that you really need to know what happened next. In this novel, the body was found in bistro in Three Pines. No one knows about this man, and no one knows how this body ended up being in this bistro. And also from the very beginning, we know that there is something shady going on with the Olivier, who is one of the owners of the bistro, and we also know that there is something in the woods, and so the novel starts from here. So these are like the very few, maybe 2 first chapters. It was very dark, it was very heartwarming, and also this novel broke my heart. And I do think that Louise Penny, yes, this is one of the first books on the novel, on the series, but I do think that before that Louise Penny has like a code to her series, that there is this Three Pines village, something bad happens here, but not to the people who are in the center of this village, who we know for a long time, and who are good people, and we know about it, and we know them, we know about their lives, we know about their friends, their habits. Nothing bad can happen to them, and in this book she broke this code, which was a great stress for me personally, and I do think that for lots of her readers. I gave it 4 stars. I do think the mystery in here was very clever and interesting, and I liked new characters and new relationships, but the ending didn't explain everything for me as a reader, and I just don't know. I do think that these 500 pages deserve better ending, but still very good. The language is beautiful, the characters are wonderful, the psychological interpretation of their, what they did and what they said was again top-notch. I do think that I love this series very much, and this is one of the best on the market right now that you can read. It's a pity that it's so long, and I don't think I could catch up until the end of the year, but we'll see. So yeah, highly recommend Brutal Telling by Louise Penny, but only 4 stars because of the ending, and because I do think that these mysteries take part in 2 books, not in 1. Then I read Fearsome Doubt by Charles Todd. This is Inspector Ian Rutledge mystery. I took it from the library, and also I listened to it as an audiobook. I gave it 5 stars. I liked it very much. This book was great from the beginning to the end, and all the characters and the mystery was really good. In this novel there are 2 mysteries. The first mystery is that woman whose husband was hanged before the war because of Ian Rutledge investigation. Came to Inspector Ian Rutledge again, and told that she found new evidence that her husband was not guilty, and she wants him to to investigate once more, because she wants justice, not for her husband but for the sake of her kids, who deserves better life than to being children of a man who was hung for a murder. And another mystery takes place in Kent, where Inspector he went to visit his friend's wife. His friend was killed in the war, so she is his widow, and while staying near her and visiting old friends from his childhood, he began involved with this series of murders that took place on the roads at night in Kent, all the people who were murdered were soldiers who returned from the war without leg or arm or something else. And so they were invalids, but still they were working, they were trying to support their families, and they were killed while heading from work to home or vice versa. All of them were poisoned, and he's trying to investigate what happened, how did it happen. These two murders are like separate mysteries, but they linked to one each other in head of the inspector, and he found maybe not clues but understanding about one mystery in the resolving the other mystery. So it was interesting to dive deep into his thoughts. I get used to his alter ego, to this second person that lives in his hand, to Hamish. I now I'm in peace with it. I wasn't at first, it disturbed me in general, but now I think I'm fine and I just do not pay attention. I really like this mystery series. Again, it's deeply psychological and interesting and engaging. Again, I agree that there are 24 mysteries in this series and I feel like I will never catch up, but still I am trying and I really find a great pleasure in it. So this is the third mystery I read this month and I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Let's Talk About Middle Grade. This is Greenglass House by Kate Milford. I like this book. I gave it 3 stars. This is a mystery novel, some kind of a mystery novel. The main protagonist is a boy called Milo. He is adopted by his parents, new parents, and he is living in this Greenglass house, which is an inn for on the island, on the mountain on an island, so it's very hard to reach it. And it's the beginning of Christmas holidays, and usually this is very quiet time in this inn. And unexpectedly lots of people came in here staying as a guests. No one is returning guest, they all are first-time guests. All of them are very mysterious, and there is something strange beginning to happen. And then, because this is a classic genre, they became snowed in this inn and no one went from there. Milo find a rather unexpected friend in here and begin to, this is a game investigation which led to uncovering the big mystery of this house. The best thing about this novel is an atmosphere. This is like a huge atmospherically book, very cozy, very wintry. When it is very cold and snow outside, it blizzards or something, but you are in a friendly environment near the fire, tasty food, Christmas tree, it's all in here. And you can dive in and wrap this book like a blanket and just stay in this book for as long as you want. Another thing, this book is very, very, very slow. Like, this is the slowest middle grade I've ever read, which is not bad, it's just unusual. Another thing that, I am not a main reader of this book. My daughter loved this book, but for me, I cracked the main suspense mystery in here at the very beginning, like on the first pages. And though it was still enjoyable, I lacked this factor of wow, because I knew the main turning point in here. But it is good. There is a slice of supernatural in here, so you need to know it before start it, I think. But this is great. Also, this greenhouse is very beautifully described. There are these color glass windows in every room, and they are very different and they're described gorgeously. I love this book, but the plot lack, I don't know, the intensity for me, or maybe the deepness. But again, I am adult, so this is a hugely atmospheric book, and this book I can recommend to everyone who wants wintry books. This is the most wintry book I've ever read. So yeah, highly recommend actually Greenglass House. Just don't expect it to be slow-paced, middle grade fun novel. It is very different vibe, but still I think it is very unique. So yeah, highly recommend. Another book that I've read, and I can't say that it was my favorite, it was The Milky Way by Moiya McTier, I believe. This is a non-fiction novel, Autobiography of Our Galaxy, The Milky Way. The author, Moiya McTier, she invented this character, who is our galaxy. And this book is told from the first person. She's telling about her birth, she's telling about her friends, her neighbors, how she made stars, how she worked hard to, make the environment. So this is like astrophysics with fun touch. I can't say that I loved this book, though I find it really engaging. First, there is a lot of science in this book, and sometimes it was too sciencey for me, but with this weird touch of... I'll show you an example later. Milky Way in this book has a very sarcastic and sassy personality, which I do not like usually in the books. I just do not like this type of character. Maybe this why I just didn't like it that much, because I just didn't engaged with the main character in this book. For me, it wasn't likable, and that's why. And it's really weird to say about non-fiction about astrophysics, but here we are. As I know, the author has a master not only in astrophysics but also in mythology. You can tell it from here, because she is telling a lot of stories about how people on the Earth, what people on the Earth tell, what stories do people in the Earth tell about stars and universe and, all this stuff. And it blends beautifully in this narrative. But this type of narrative I find a little bit too much. Let me show you an example. So here's a quick abstract about Milky Way, the galaxy, talking about her neighbor and friend Larry, who is also we know as Large Magellanic Cloud. Have you ever met someone who just can't make a decision? I suppose for you that would be someone who can't decide whether to eat for dinner or whether to take some probably average job. Well, in our neighborhood, that's Larry, who can't choose between being a galaxy and being a dwarf. Larry is the fourth largest galaxy in the local group and has neither delusions about climbing up the chain nor hard feelings about not being in the competition. Whereas Trin's pretty personality comes from being just out of reach of greatness, Larry never had a chance to be anything special and therefore never established much of an identity at all. But that doesn't mean Larry isn't a little impressive. No, 14,000 light-year diameter and mass of more than 10 billions of your suns is certainly remarkable, especially for a dwarf galaxy. Larry's just wishy-washy. It's boring and it's just not the type of energy I like to have around. I know you can't really tell from the ground, so you'll just have to take my word, for it is a galaxy who's watched Larry absentmindedly push dust and gas around for billions of years. Only pushing, because cosmos forbid any stars actually get made. So here is the language in this. It is very modern, slightly, city modern. I bet that Milky Way is listening to hip hop a lot, and it's a little bit too much for me. Maybe not with my imagination. Maybe I just don't like this type of persons, so it's a little bit too much for me to think that the whole thing surrounding me and everything is this type of person. But I really think that author did a great job about first explaining different topic in easy way, and second of creating and pushing through the whole book this interesting, sassy personality of imaginative character. So I do think that if you think that maybe science is not for you, it's too much, you don't understand, maybe try this book. Maybe you will still not understand, but at least you'll have some knowledge and you'll have a great time reading it. This is, I think, a fun book for people who understand astrophysics, because it's just like a couple of anecdotes in here, but not type of non-fiction for me, so I gave it 3 stars. Then I read a classic book, which was A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. This is like a tale about a young girl who came to Italy with her chaperone to stay there, to see a world, maybe to find a suitable husband for herself, but of course only in Englishmen, between Englishmen. And she is staying in this pension, and this is a love story, but this is all about encounters with different people in there, about Englishmen abroad, about experiencing the world. It is a very musical book. There is a lot about music in here. I loved it. I loved the language. This is the book that you really want to reread at a chapter only because of the language and because of the descriptions after you finished it. The plot was engaging and interesting, but the language was the best in this book, and characterization. I gave it 5 stars. I do think that maybe E.M. Forster can be my favorite author or one of my favorite authors. This is my 3rd book by him, and the 3rd I gave 5 stars. I really liked it. Highly recommend. It's maybe also a great way to start with classics, because it is very easy to read and engaging and funny and beautifully written. So yeah, highly recommend this book. And then I read 2 more books. First of them was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I gave it 3 stars, but it was more like 2.5. It was a solid 3, like not more than that. It was dull for me. It's supposed to be a cozy fantasy, and it is just that. It is a cozy fantasy about she-orc warrior who quit her job and decided to open a cafeteria in the city where no one knows what cafe is. So she begins to talk to these people about coffee and lattes, and she began to build her cafe and all the stuff. It's like Starbucks, but in a fantasy world. It's cozy, nothing really. Well, there are bad things that happen, but there are like, from the very beginning that everything will be fine, and there is no mystery, no suspense. It just flows. And I don't think it was too exciting for me when they, understand that the coffee can be cold and then begin to sell them cold, and it became a wonderful thing. Or when they invented croissants. It just didn't work for me at all. Still, there is sapphic romance in here, and it's beautiful. And I think that if people think that fantasy is gory and too violent, maybe this is a fantasy for them. But it's like more a romance vibe for me, and it didn't work. So yeah, 3 stars. I can recommend it to few people, but not for everyone. I don't think this is a book for everyone. And the last book I read and I gave it 4.5 stars was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I do think this is a wonderful book. I definitely want to buy it to my library. This is a story about friendship of a young girl and a young boy who used to play games in their childhood together, computer games. And then they became IT engineer and designer, and then began to make games themselves. And this is about their startup where they made computer games. It is beautifully written. The characters are great. This is a very heartwarming story about friendship, which is never goes to the love story. It's always stopped right on the edge, and I think it was a great thing because there are not very many books about friendships, and this is a gorgeously written one. Also, if you ever played in any game, either on your phone or on your computer, including solitaire, you know, this is a book interestingly telling you about games. Changed its genre near the end and became more like less a story about people, but more a story about games and life, and how each of them intersects, and how the end of the life is permanent or maybe not, whether the end in the game can be regamed, you know, redone. I thought that, yes, it didn't give me, it's like reading a different book at the end. It didn't give me the closure of the first part of the book, but it made something more meaningful. It lifted me as a reader to another step to look on all this story from another angle. And I do think it's very cleverly done and very beautiful. You can still read this book if you are not the gamer. I am not the gamer. I played like maybe 3 games in my whole life, and still I found the philosophy of this book interesting and engaging and beautiful. And maybe I'll make another video about only this book because I do think it deserves this. I gave it 4.5 stars, but this is a meaningful book for me, and it can be in my, you know, best of the year, because I mean, this and maybe E.M. Forster are like the best books of this month, though still I didn't give it 5 stars. So yeah, these are my January reads. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you'll have a wonderful February, and I'll be with you again very soon. Hope you'll be cozy with your book and having a great time. Bye!